Live.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to tonight's episode of The Roundtable. I am your host, Danny Ellyson, here on the Grayson Network, and today is March 24th. In our normal processes, I want to extend a moment for the opening of our show on our State of the State with our attorney, Alex Johnson. Alex?
Hey everyone, glad to be here tonight, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on both here and nationwide. It's interesting when some of these tragic events that have happened over the past week. I mean, I know that everyone watching has heard about the shootings that occurred over the past week, and of course, you have a lot of people wanting to use the law to try to prevent evil people from doing evil things to their fellow man. And one of those things, of course, is you hear a lot of people start talking about either, we now have a hate crimes law in Georgia, which is, bad in a few different ways, but you also have these advocates for gun control that keep popping up around the country. And it's a shame that people have morphed the idea of the law into something where we are we have to turn to the law whenever something bad happens, assuming they'll somehow affect society. I mean, it's already illegal to kill people. We know that murder is wrong. We know that killing people is wrong. And a lot of the places where these guns have been used, I mean, they already have strong gun control measures. I think that's the case in Colorado. Yet we still have lots of people wanting more restrictions on firearms. And it's shocking because that comes from a lot of people who oftentimes want there to be less people locked up. That they criticize the criminal justice system for being like racially biased, and then they ignore the fact that the people that will be targeted by gun control laws are going to oftentimes be people who are minorities in one way or the other. And you also have the issue that if you take the ability to get guns and add waiting periods to letting people get guns, it victimizes women who may need firearms to defend themselves. It's a very sexist concept. It's a racist concept to add these gun control laws, and that's what people are advocating now, especially people on the left. And I think it's very, very concerning. I mean, I personally have a case, Catherine and I have a case where we had a gentleman who walked into his home with a firearm and was arrested for it, held at gunpoint, and was arrested simply for carrying a gun into his own home. And this gentleman was Black. That may or may not have affected it, but he ended up being charged. Catherine, of course, beat the criminal charges, and now we're suing the government officials who arrested him. But it's a long, drawn-out process, and those are the type of things that happen when you start criminalizing. And in that case, it wasn't even he broke the law, but when you criminalize like peaceful, self-responsible behavior, such as taking responsibility for your own safety, you end up with a lot of disturbing outcomes. And I think that we need to be focused on personal responsibility for our own safety and allow people to have the tools they need to defend themselves, which includes access to firearms. And it's a shame that people don't think about it in those simple terms. They think the government can solve everything, and that's not the way to do it.
Outstanding intro, Alex, and thank you so much for that. And that segues obviously into our topic for tonight, which is the heart of America. Folks, tonight I want to step away from our normal behaviors and talking about every political incident, every political stunt, every political problem. And I want to talk to you about the heart of our nation and where we are. I'd be remiss if I were not to tell you that I have a conviction in my soul and in my heart that this show tonight should air solely for us all to come together and to highlight the opportunities that we have to be better for each other, better for ourselves, and better going forward. I'd like to take the time now to welcome Catherine Bernard to the show. Catherine, welcome back. It's so good to have you here back at the round table. And I yield to you 7 minutes.
Well, I have to say, I agree with everything Alex was saying about the gun situation. I hate it. I hate the way that the narrative can get centered on these, mass incidents so quickly. We had the situation in Atlanta, obviously. than the situation in Colorado. And, setting aside the people who think, oh, this is an awfully convenient kind of false flag situation. The fact is, human beings are dead. And that's what matters. And I think that's what matters to all of us as Americans. And we shouldn't lose sight of that. We shouldn't let, our discussions over the Second Amendment, which obviously here we're all firmly in favor of, but, the people who are opposing us are doing it a lot of times because they genuinely are thinking guns are dangerous. I don't want people to lose their lives. And so when we connect with them on these issues, we've got to remember, we're coming from a place of protection, of wanting people to be able to take responsibility for their own safety. We're not looking to make it a racial identity politics issue, whether that's, the victims in Atlanta or the victims in Colorado or anywhere else. I think just like Danny said, this is about coming together as Americans and looking at, what are our shared values. And the fact is, our shared values are that a government who has surrounded itself with barbed wire and armed forces in DC absolutely has no right whatsoever to even start a conversation about one single gun restriction. So at this point, I don't even think we should entertain it from our government officials. Here in Georgia, we've had some bandwagon jumpers trying to, get up on the votes for the next election by saying, oh, we need a waiting period. We need this and that. As Alex said, that's the kind of thing that, denies victims the opportunity to protect themselves. And so don't let these people wrap themselves up in, a false concern for human life. Those of us who believe in self-defense are the ones who need to be occupying that moral high ground. But again, we don't want to let the entire conversation turn into a debate on whatever the outrage of the day is. But I will say guns seem to be very much in the news. And one of the cases that I have been working on when I have not been at the roundtable is the case of Bryant Maynor, a 32-year-old Georgia man who was at a Waffle House in South DeKalb earlier this month. And he was confronted by two young men who were trying to steal his car. He saw guns in their hands. And so he used his firearm to defend himself and his property and found himself arrested for aggravated assault because of it. I obviously was just shocked and horrified by this and put out the call that, I would be honored to represent him. Turns out we had a connection. And so I was able to meet with him, and we're going to be going forward, defending him against these ridiculous charges. But I really think, he represents, this is a 32-year-old Black man from Claxton, Georgia. He's got his carry permit, no felony convictions. He trains at the gun range with his 40. He's a responsible gun owner, and he was defending himself and his property. And so that's the kind of person we need to stand behind, not some abstract concept of the Second Amendment, but a real human being in his community defending his property and his life against people who would take those from him. And so even though the people who were trying to steal his car turned out to be juveniles, they were grown enough to be shooting at people and trying to steal cars. And so I think we want to stay on the right side of these questions and stay on the side of people defending themselves against violence, defending themselves against, these horrible shooters who have, unfortunately engaged so much of our collective consciousness recently.
Catherine, thank you so much for your introduction. Well said. Outstanding contribution. Folks, tonight, listen. And to my panelists, listen to me. It's going to be a little bit different tonight. We have constantly addressed issues at national and federal levels, state levels, where we have talked about our concerns. We have talked about where we can come together and our solutions, our resolve, our opinion pieces. But I think it's important that all of us sink together in our heart. So this is impromptu to all of our viewers tonight, just so you know, none of the panelists were prepared for this. They don't know anything about it. But as I had previously mentioned, we're going to talk about the heart of our nation. That being said, I want to talk about the heart in several different categories of what we're currently living through. So much so is it's going to sound political, but really truthfully, it's about the heart. Derrick, I'm going to come to you. Kamala Harris, our currently declared vice president, has made it known when she was asked if she would visit the border, go down there and see this egregious behavior that is taking place and the crisis that has been created by their administration. She laughed out loud and provided no comment. Derrick, what say you? Where is the heart in America?
the heart of the people running America is in the gutter. The last few months, I took the time to bone up on some old historical figures, and I sort of summarized who they were. I called it, it was posts about tyrants. But when I see today, there are 3 points I want to make. The two situations that strike you the most is that of the Salem witch trials and that of Emperor Nero. Nero was a 16-year-old whose mother, Aquafina, convinced her husband, the emperor at the time, Claudius, to make him heir over his own biological son. And Claudius had a weakness for young women. You know, I call them predilections, and we see a lot of people in politics, even in the pulpit, that have various predilections. But to try and get to the point quickly, she wanted to share power with her son. And at 21, he was so ticked at her constantly coming after him for that, he sent his guards to go and kill her. Before they killed her, she asked, and this was her request, to be struck in her genitals first, to send a message to him, I repent that I gave birth to you. But the key point, and he also used Christians as lamp torches along the streets. People will get away with what the people allowed them to get away with. And in Rome in that time, it was commonplace for there to be slaves and mistreatment of people and people that would throw babies, you know, in the garbage. Nothing would happen because it was commonplace. The leadership allowed it, and the leadership got away with what they wanted to get rid of. In a particular case of Nero, he was so cruel. He forced a young man to be castrated so that he could become his fourth wife. It wasn't the people that rose up against Nero. It was the Senate, other rich people, because Nero was doing it to them now. As long as they were living in a lap of luxury, they were good with it. But when he turned on them, they declared him an enemy of the state. He fled and, of course, ended up committing suicide. So this was just simply the rich and powerful doing what they wanted to do to the people. And the people at the time were powerless to do anything about it. And then we fast forward into the 15th century with the Salem witch trials, two little girls playing a game. And when they found that they had done something which was spoken against, and that was to practice any form of witchcraft, because it was punishable by death. Now, these are the Puritans that we're talking about, God-fearing people that brought a lot of ways with them from over in England. But at any rate, these two girls found that once they had done what they had done, they were fearful for what they thought the result was. So they began to pretend that they were being attacked by spirits, and they started to name names, the first of which was a slave by the name of Tituba, who was their housekeeper. Make a long story short, they went to killing people. They arrested in upwards of 300 people. 30 were convicted. 19 were hanged. That included 14 women and 5 men. One was a devout Christian. A woman was a devout Christian who refused to plead guilty because she knew she hadn't done anything. So she allowed herself to be hanged instead. And the preacher, those two, the two little girls, one was the niece and one was the daughter of a preacher by the name of Parrish. Parrish realized that they were lying because people were starting to have doubts. They had stopped going to church. And rather than come and provide the truth to the people, he used the Bible against them to condemn them to keep the lie going because he didn't want to lose his job. But here is the sad part. It wasn't until two of the men involved in prosecuting and overseeing these trials and convictions and hangings, it wasn't until their wives were accused of witchcraft that it all ended. Again, the heart of the Puritans then was in the gutter, and those who lead everything. And so when we fast forward to today, the reason I went through all of those tyrants did what they knew they could get away with without retribution up to a point. Here in America, we have a constitution, a document that makes this one of the greatest countries in the world. It says how far government is allowed to go. But yet, because of the people, now I'm talking about the people, those that vote for rhinos, those that make comments that Biden is doing such a wonderful job with immigration, all of these people, and now Biden is talking about an executive order. Well, he said an executive order at first, but then he pointed to having the Senate to pass this bill right away. And my question was this: are cops going to kill me to take away my AR-15, which is not an assault weapon? Are they going to kill me to take my, no, I shouldn't say kill, murder me, the unrighteous taking of a life, to take my gun away from me because of something that took place that is not even, that doesn't even touch the scale on deaths that are committed by individuals, because a gun never killed anyone, by individuals who have deadly hearts and deadly intent. The sad part is our brothers and sisters have allowed this to happen because of the people that we have put in charge. And the people that we have put in charge, their hearts are in the gutter, and they will go as far as we let them. Forgive me for going so long, but I'm just trying to draw a parallel to people to get them to understand the hearts of wicked men has never changed. It has never changed. This is what we do. There are debates going on right now. Did man, we, Homo sapiens sapiens, did we wipe out the Neanderthals intentionally? Okay, but I digress. But that's where we are. So when I look around and see people applauding some of the things that I see, naturally Joe Biden is going to go as far as he can. Naturally Kamala is going to go as far as she can. Naturally Obama is going to step back in and do what he does. Naturally, and Alex, you were there, Catherine, you were there. You heard what David Schaefer said about what took place when he found out last August, when they knew the law was being broken, and the most that they could muster was 4 lawsuits. I'm sorry I went so long. I yield my time back, but I just wanted to get that out.
Derrick, well said. And to my panelists tonight, just so you know, I'm not going to interrupt you. We're talking about the heart of America. And your vocal contribution to that will not be limited. I will allow you to speak tonight without limits. That being said, Derrick, you alluded to our gun rights. Again, folks, we're talking about the heart of America. Where are we? Where are we as a country? And of course, you know, in my wrap-ups, I'll bring up mine. But we're going to go through a few topics. I want to go over to Catherine Bernard. Let's talk for just a moment. Gun rights, Senate Bill 292, Marco Rubio. Here we go. There's a lien. There's a possibility to resolve to the states the right to collect people's firearms. Here it comes. It's there. It's a conversation. Where is the heart of America when the document that defends the citizens of this nation no longer matters?
Well, I think it was Judge Learned Hand who said, you know, when liberty dies in the hearts of men and women, you know, no constitution can save it. And that is definitely true. I agree with everything that Derrick has said about, the historical examples of tyranny that we see and the hearts of wicked men and women who have, enjoyed authoritarian power over their fellow citizens, that doesn't change. There are some people who either enjoy or are willing to tolerate using coercion to interact with their fellow humans, and they can really make a problem for the rest of us who just want to be left alone to, live our peaceful lives. And that was the genius of the Second Amendment, making it such a priority within the Bill of Rights is, it is authorizing the right to defend yourself, which is not given by the Constitution. You have it as a free human being who has the right to your own body and your own property. The Constitution just provides a mechanism for government to protect it. And so this bill from Marco Rubio, I haven't read it. It sounds disgusting. It sounds just like the situation that my state rep is trying to push here in Georgia with red flag gun seizures, where they want an excuse to be able to go into people's houses and take their guns. A more obvious violation of the Second Amendment can hardly be imagined. And, I've talked to these folks. I've gone down, for the hearings, and they talk about, there's the one story actually from a state rep here in Georgia who, told this very horrible story about this abusive, terrible person who was married to, one of her, I think, children or grandchildren who had, abused them, and the DA wouldn't do anything about it. And, they couldn't get any criminal charges. They couldn't get a warrant. And, I'm trying to figure out what's going on with this story. And what's going on with the story is the bad guy in question was a federal law enforcement officer. And that's why no local prosecutors would go after him or hold him accountable. And so it's cases like that that are being used as justification for taking away other people's rights. The abuses perpetrated by an oppressive government are then being cited as reasons that we need to take away even more rights. And so that's what Marco Rubio's bill represents, everything about these red flag gun seizures. Folks need to read about the Duncan Limp case in Maryland, which was a red flag gun seizure. They went into someone's house on a warrant and shot him dead. We know this happens all the time to Americans of all colors, of all genders, of all backgrounds. It's not something that's limited to any one person. And so I think gun rights have to be at the heart of America right now, because we have to be able to defend ourselves. We certainly can't trust that the legislators up there behind their barbed wire fences and, razor wire surrounding allegedly public buildings. At this point, perhaps it's strong to say that I have written them off, but when they build fences around all of the capitals, I think it's time to stop pretending that Mr. Smith is going to go to Washington and get everything all straightened out. I'm not going to wait in line outside the razor wire to talk to my representative. And so I think we have to acknowledge that the posture of the country has changed, and it's more about identifying in this cause of self-defense with our fellow Americans, rather than letting government divide us and make us think, oh, the enemy is those guys in the other party. No, the enemy is the guy trying to take away your guns. And I see plenty of R's and D's who are more than happy to do that. So, I love that you're focusing on the heart of America for tonight, Danny, because that's what we have to get back to. And it really is about protecting life and preserving people's right to be left alone. And certainly, not listening to, again, people who would never give up their armed guards and razor wire, who want to take away your guns.
Outstanding, Catherine. Outstanding. Alex, coming to you. We're just talking about the heart of America, taking things away. Let's shift the conversation a little bit. We're living in a climate where the conversation with Plan B and high schoolers and teenagers having access to the rights to their body to make informed decisions for themselves under medical counsel, where we're now easily able to murder babies in the womb. We can kill them legally in this country all day, every day, whatever we want to. Where is the heart of America when the heart of our nation's babies are being stopped for a simple price?
I mean, the heart of America, it flows into what you were just describing, Danny, but with both of your previous questions, is that, I mean, the political class, and specifically a lot of the people on the left, I mean, they're laughing at the heart of America. That's what Kamala Harris was laughing at when it came down to responding to that question, is that they have no respect for the American people. They have no respect for life. And I mean, when I say that, I don't say it lightly, but I say it because if you look at our history, you have the fact that the push for more abortion. I mean, it started as part of a eugenics movement. I mean, the idea was to kill off like Black babies disproportionately, and that's something that the left had been pushing. That's something that was pushed by Sanger. I mean, this is not something that is hidden away from knowledge. This is something that can be easily researched and found, that there was a gigantic eugenics movement towards the beginning of the 20th century. And that movement is one that led right to the idea of killing babies in the womb. It may have happened before that, but that still was a great increase in it, and it really permeated society. And the push to make it legal and to put it in the legal battleground is something to normalize the behavior. And you have people like, you would not all politicians actually know this. I hate actually speaking of them as if they are all actually intelligent, because I've met plenty of them and they aren't. But I would figure that someone like Kamala Harris turning around and laughing in response to true issues of public concern just sort of shows that in her mind, she understands that what she's doing is political theater. And what a lot of them do is political theater. I mean, in the chat, the thing it was mentioned about Marco Rubio in Senate 292, you could see other bills in the Georgia legislature. I mean, what they're doing is they propose things that any moral, ethical person would know are wrong and bad for society. Anybody with any sort of philosophical or political background that understand the way laws actually affect human lives and affect individual citizens would be appalled by anything that's going to get more people locked up with red flag laws or have more people die. But ultimately, the politicians, those that are running things in politics and their consultants in the multi-billion-dollar political industry, they don't care. They are laughing at us. Anyone who's speaking at it from a moral perspective and saying this is wrong, we shouldn't be doing this, this is hurting people's lives. I mean, the people in politics making money off of it are legitimately, they are laughing at us because they are getting elected by doing things like this. They think they will stay in office longer by doing things like this or get reelected. And the only way we are going to beat them is by getting them out of office. And that requires organization. It requires getting people tied in and empowered and engaged. All Americans, not in some weird partisan fight, but in a fight where people are organized and understand that what we're fighting against is people who deride us, despise us, have contempt for us, and do not care about morality and ethics. I mean, that's part of the reason why I'm leading the Georgia Republican Assembly here in Georgia, but it's really just something that everyone everywhere needs to be organized and stop treating these people that are laughing at us with respect, because they don't deserve it. They're hurting people's lives and killing people. And that's something I think that's been echoed earlier in this and in other roundtables.
Alex, well said. Well done. I can tell you that in your closing there and wrapping up your explanation, I can tell you I've been on the receiving end of some of those emotions. And as I'm sure we all have in our own different ways. And that segues perfectly into the emotions of family, right? Where's the family in America? And Brian Slawinski, I'm going to come to you. And I'm so glad that you're in at this moment. Tonight, we're talking about the heart of America. And as we see there in the background, as your family gathers together and you're wrapping up your dinner plans, we actually get to see what it is that the media won't show anymore, what families can't talk about anymore. And that is community, communion, being able to break bread together, being able to bless the food together. Brian, where is the heart of America when it comes to recognizing the process of family?
It's disappeared. It's totally disappeared. They make everything like everybody needs to have fairness, and everything needs to be equal. but everybody should have the same opportunity. That I agree with. The opportunities are available, but it's based on what you do as an individual person and how you get along with other people, how you make alliances to build your business or to, or whatever, or build your family. Your family is about, being together and celebrating things together. I mean, we were celebrating a birthday tonight. That's why I was late to the meeting, because we wanted to make sure that we had a little family time and had a little birthday cake. That's what I was finishing up. I appreciate you taking me off the video because I was enjoying a very good chocolate cake, by the way. I think it's still here, actually. So just to give you an idea.
Outstanding. That is gorgeous.
Ooh, I'm very good too. But when it comes to doing what's right for our country, we got to get back to the basics. We got to get back to the Constitution, and we got to get back to respecting our families.
Brian, outstanding, and thank you for joining us on the heels of a family function, and that perfectly keeps me on track of where I'm trying to be right now, and it opens an opportunity to speak for a minute to where I'm trying to go with the next phase of this conversation, and that is that, often in the old school, when all of us went to church, we had these things called potlucks, and people would get together and all of the grandmothers and aunties would get together with the baked goods, and they'd have competitions on who had the best banana pudding. And, you had the sweet cook-off, and the gentleman would be out on the grill talking about who had the best chicken recipe or the pork recipe. And the pastor would walk around like an executive where everybody gave him a spoon to taste their stuff because they respected the pastor. They respected his duties. They respected the place in which that pastor existed. Derrick, coming to you. Pastors are no longer respected. They are now chastised. The church pews are emptying. Some will blame COVID, but you and I both know that that's not why. What happened to the heart of America and the church?
Wow. So that takes a bit of explaining. I don't talk about this that much.
Don't worry, we have time.
I graduated from Beulah Heights Bible College. A lot of people don't know that I have a degree in biblical education. And I've seen a lot coming up in church, and I understand a lot of the history that most people do not. And that's okay, because if you believe in Jesus Christ, basically it requires that you accept, believe, confess, and go out and do what he has asked us to do, occupy till he comes. So if you got that, knowing a lot of the other things that we hear that are being taught that are just plain wrong is really irrelevant. However, when Martin Luther challenged the church with his 99 Theses about all the things he saw that he could not back up by scripture, he literally had to run for his life after that. And he gave us the first Bible unlocked from the ancient texts in the German language, by the way. And then from there, it went from there. The problem with that was it was a two-edged sword. Even though the scriptures were no longer locked anymore, anybody could read them, as we did translations, more and more. And after, one of the most popular being the King James Version, 1611. As more and more people were able to read, it brought with it another can of worms. Everybody and his brother decided to start up a denomination based off a verse in the Bible, not really understanding what was going on. For instance, I'll just give you a quick example. The Baptists, the Methodists, and the Anabaptists. The Anabaptists basically said you were baptized as a child, you already belong to God. What's the point? You need to be baptized again as an adult. The Methodist said, sprinkling is fine if you're out there in the desert, and there ain't no water, to dunk you in, you ought to be able to use a little, sprinkling. You see that in the Catholic Church as well. Of course, the Baptists believe, take me down to the water, the whole dunking, But the Bible talks about baptism in spirit. What John did with the water was only symbolic. So those types of things, kind of led us astray. But I believe that when most people that took to the trade of evangelizing and saving souls originally had an honest heart, except for those, of course, who used it to their advantage. But the bastardization of Christianity came when slavers, that's what I call them, tried to use the Bible to justify slavery with that one scripture, slaves, obey your masters. Jesus would not submit to tyranny, the raping of, a man's wife or his children, all that nonsense that went on under slavery. And then the KKK, I heard a quote where somebody said, most everything has two faces. Christianity had the KKK. And, that was one of the examples that it gave. Islam, they've got the jihadists. So somebody's always messing up something somewhere for whatever reason. But moving right along, I think the selling of the Bible was probably at its worst when Black preachers were convinced to get Blacks to sign on to welfare, and in exchange for it, for the welfare, to vote for Democrat. That was the beginning of the end, I believe, for the Black family as a whole. Understanding the Bible. I coined a term, pulpit and podium pimps, cut from the same cloth. Men who want to stay in politics for the rewards of it, self-enrichment, and men who want to stay in the pulpit for the rewards of it, self-enrichment. And the church has become weakened. It is weak because people won't stand up. And I'll close with this. At my own church, and I've been a member there 6-7 years, was ordained under them. When this corona stuff broke out, the pastor decided, and I served under a woman. We got Easter coming up. And I know a lot of people, well, if you sit up under a woman, you're out of the will of God. The first two evangelists, were women who announced the return of Jesus Christ. They were women. Women are powerful, just as powerful as men in Christ. And a lot of people don't get that, but I digress. But at any rate, I sit under a woman, but someone else was having an issue with the fact that I didn't wear a mask. Now, mind you, the pastor shut down the church from March to June and asked for my buy-in. I said, we need to open the church. We opened the church in June. I never wore a mask from June up until January, late January, when I decided to leave. Somebody else had a problem with it. And when my pastor came to me, this is that weakness I talk about, and said, listen, I saw a sign on the door, mask mandatory, and I walked to her and I said, Pastor, I love you to death, but I am not going to be forced to wear a mask. Well, we don't want to get fined and we don't want to get shut down. And that was the second problem. She used a lie to try and sell me. A lady that I knew a long time ago, Mercy Hicks, God rest her soul. She said to me, Derrick, leaders are readers. Leaders are readers. I read everything I can get. And I know ain't no way here in Georgia is there a bill saying your church will be shut down if you don't make people put on masks, or you'll be fined if you don't make masks mandatory. That's just not happening in East Atlanta, Georgia. Not at all. So why would she use a lie? That is a corrupt spirit, whether it be out of ignorance or whether it be intentional, but it was driven by somebody else. So she called me and said, look, it appears that there's a wedge between us because I don't wear a mask. She is. And I said, well, Pastor, I'm standing on the word of God. Now, I've been coming to church 6 months without a mask. Not a single soul in this church under this roof has tested positive for COVID. Not one. Why would I change now? If I'm going to stand on the word of God, I'm going to stand on the word of God. I didn't get into the whys and ifs and all the science, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Didn't even bother going there. But she said, well, maybe you ought to take a leave of absence. That was my signal that God was moving me out of that church. When I went back there, I made her a promise. I will never leave again of my own volition. God will have to move me. And that day, God moved me. So the church is not what it used to be. Milquetoast preachers who are afraid to tell people the truth about the word of God because they don't want to lose somebody. A good friend of mine eulogized my mother, told me words out of his own mouth. Derrick, I can't talk about women having babies out of wedlock. I'm going to make the grandmama mad, the mama mad, and the baby mad. And it's the women that's paying the bills of the church. That is literally what a friend of mine told me, a guy I grew up with. My love like a brother, but he is sold out. I will not sell out. So you want my opinion on the church? The church right now resides in the hearts of men. It is certainly not up under the roofs and inside the doors of many of these churches that are out here operating today. They turn Jesus into a slot machine. That's it.
Found your spot to steal my thunder, Derrick. Outstanding. Outstanding. I knew you would find a way. Catherine, coming to you. Let's talk about another segue about the heart of America. Let's talk about the heart of America in the court system. Say it used to be that in the heart of America, you had the right to a fair, balanced, speedy trial. You had the right to a jury. You had a right to an attorney, legal representation, somebody knowledgeable in the law that could represent you before your peers, but also a judge. It would appear to me and to many others that that might be different today than what we have known throughout history. So my question to you, Catherine, is where is the heart of America in the courts?
Well, right now it's wearing a mask, unfortunately. And I really just am very concerned about the prospect for human beings to be able to connect with each other in the ways that are so crucial to the administration of justice with this mask situation. So to piggyback off of what Derrick was saying, there are some courthouses that are functioning, close to normally. People are wearing masks, but not too seriously. There's certainly no expectation that you wear one while you're at the counsel table, actually speaking to the judge, impacting your client's rights. But then I've been to some other courthouses recently where it's masks on all the time. The prosecutor is standing there at the table telling the judge why my client should be punished, speaking through a mask. And, I've struggled at times to put my finger on exactly what is so problematic about this, right? Because there's certain masks you can get that, they're somewhat comfortable and you can sort of hear people through them. And, people always like to say, oh, well, surgeons can do their jobs in masks. And I'm like, well, but the surgeon isn't trying to convince your heart to start beating again. It's not trying to do any public advocacy in that situation of being masked up. And so, what I think is so difficult for a lot of people to believe is, our jury system was not in a good place even before the COVID pandemic. We were already seeing people having their right to a jury trial restricted by, overloaded calendars, or prosecutors manipulating the calendar, or judges dragging it out and bringing people in for 100 calendar calls. So finally they just say, oh, I've got to plead guilty. I can't miss any more work for this. So we were already dealing with a situation where the right to jury trial was severely constrained. And in some, metro counties, what these justice fortresses, where the jurors are just being led around the back corridors of, massive courthouses by government employees, it was already very difficult to get those jurors to understand their true power, which is, they were there to pass judgment on what the government is doing. It's not the government telling the jurors what they can do. It's the jurors telling the government what they can do. And in a situation of mask mandates, you completely lose that dynamic. And instead, you have a bunch of scared sheep. I hate to use that term, but, particularly with the social distancing requirements that are in place, they are genuinely trying to envision trials with people spaced out 6 feet from one another, wearing masks. And, I don't have to tell you all of the problems with that. How are the jurors going to be able to develop the, closeness where they feel comfortable discussing, very difficult issues that come up during the trial if they're too worried about infecting somebody? I think we've been patient. My clients have certainly been patient. They've had no option but to be being locked in jail for the past year. They've had to be patient while the pandemic has wended its way through society. And, I got to point out, we've talked about it before, but courthouses were a particularly nasty place for COVID. We did have, I think, 3 judges around the state died from it. And, a courthouse, you are literally bringing people together from all over the community. They're touching the same documents. They're breathing the same air. I'm not trying to say that we should have made no accommodations whatsoever for a virus. But at this point, there are people who want masks forever. And I think we have to recognize that, what a jury trial represents is the community coming together to decide if what the government wants to do to one of its members is okay or not. And so if we can't even agree that we should be able to see each other's faces when we make that determination, I don't want to bring my defendant masked before a jury. We have laws against masks in Georgia. For a long time, the legislators thought, wearing a mask was so dangerous that they would put you in jail if you did it. And now what? They want to put you in jail if you don't appear, for one of the most important days of your life in court with a mask. So, I want us to get back to the heart of the system. And I find myself wondering, if it's even possible at this point. And so maybe the pandemic did us a favor and sort of exposed the grossness that has been going on in our justice system for so long that was just kind of masked because people didn't notice it. And now we are actually going to have to confront these issues in a more honest way. So I'll end on an optimistic note there, Danny. I think, if we can, again, all come together and think, what do we want a justice system for? Do we want it to just be an endless revenue generator so the poorest and most vulnerable members of our community can act as cash cows for an ever, growing militarized police force? Or do we want something that reflects our community values and allows people to come together to make decisions about whether their government is serving them? I think you probably know what my preference is on that. And I just don't see it happening as long as this universal masking expectation persists.
Well, to my panelists and all of our guests here, thank you, Catherine Bernard, for your contribution in joining the team of people that have figured out how to steal thunder. And we'll make sure that you get your credit in the credits for tonight's show, because you just stole 2 points from my closing. But at least you're a contender. Alex Johnson, coming to you. Same question. Here we go. Right? So Catherine laid out one of the clearest, most impeccable descriptions of our legal institutions. I want to come to you more in the political basis about the legislature. Where is the heart of America in our legislation? I'm not talking about our electoral processes. We've already covered that tonight. We've already talked about court proceedings. We've talked about legalese. I'm talking about specifically the bond that all members of elected office have with each other to represent their people. Where is the heart of America?
Well, Danny, the elected officials that are supposed to be bonding together to represent the people, they've abdicated that responsibility a long time ago. I mean, it debatably was greatly increased with the advent of the administrative state, where politicians created government agencies, that those agencies then essentially regulated and controlled society without input from the legislature. But it was really fast-tracked when we looked to the recent emergency orders, the ones starting last year with COVID. I mean, the politicians, the legislative branch, the one that's supposed to be the one of the people, and that applies to the US Congress, but I'm thinking more about here in Georgia, they pretty much abdicated all responsibility. They gave Governor Kemp emergency powers and then they walked away. And even though a lot of legislators signed a document to, requiring them to come back into session, the quote unquote leadership, and that's, our dear Rhino Speaker of the House, David Ralston, and others, just ignored the petitions. They misled some great legislators like Matt Gertler and others and just decided like, hey, we're just not going to call this back into session, and just let the governor run amok and do whatever he wanted under the purported emergency powers. And as I may have mentioned before, I'm representing a group suing the governor over the executive orders that started last year. And when I really looked into the law regarding the executive orders and the idea of separation of powers, I mean, when you speak of the heart of America and the legislators representing the people, I mean, the Georgia Constitution is really clear about how the legislative branch is supposed to create and pass laws, and that the executive branch is not supposed to infringe on that the executive branch does not exist to create law or amend law. I mean, it definitely can veto laws, but the governor and the executive branch and all the agencies can't act outside of existing law. And as Catherine alluded to, I mean, there's OCGA 161138 that actually doesn't allow the wearing of masks. Yet you look at the executive orders, and they not only are pushing mask use, but they're also talking about sharing information on vaccinations with the federal government. They're talking about restricting people's freedom to travel, freedom to have a business, who can associate with who, violating the First Amendment. I mean, when you talk about the heart of America, the legislators representing the people, I mean, they decided that it was too tough of a problem for them to deal with, so they're just going to turn everything over to the governor and let money come from the federal government, and the rest of us can fight amongst ourselves over what's right or wrong. But anybody who's actually educated on this and looking into it realizes that it's a political abdication of responsibility, because they don't want to take a side, and ultimately we're just left having to organize ourselves and make up our own minds on how to deal with the pandemic in relation to seeing justice. I mean, what's going on in the court system is absolutely horrific, and the way that people have lost any sense of civic responsibility due to the lack of education and leadership shown from people who are supposed to be the ones educating us is rather depressing. I mean, it is all on personal responsibility at this time, and that's, I mean, I hope that everybody watching and listening stands up and gets the information and works on their own. I mean, personal responsibility is key.
Well, there you go, Alex. Welcome to the thunder stealing segment. Personal accountability. That'll be part of my wrap up. So now we've made it through Catherine, Alex, and Derrick. all stealing thunder tonight. But folks, what more do you expect when we are all equally yoked and on the same page? Who'd have thunk it? Alex, one last time. Give me that official code again one more time. Folks, OCGA means the official code of Georgia, state law. What is that site?
It's 16-11-38 regarding the fact you aren't supposed to be wearing masks that conceal a person. Like it's Georgia law.
All right, there you go. For the record, all of you lawbreakers out there, just so you know, I'm going to start calling you out every time I see you for being the freaking criminal that you are. Brian Slawinski, coming to you. The Heart of America. Last piece of our segment before we go to our wrap up, and I'm going to give everybody 2 minutes. I'm going to have to go to Catherine pretty quickly because Catherine does have a time suspense tonight, Brian. This should be sweet. As a veteran, as a household member of a current military family, and for that, we thank you for your service in Continuum. But I want to come to you for a second. Where's the heart of America in our uniformed services? The obligation that we take, the oath that says we're going to do X, Y, and Z, but our leadership that says, don't worry about your oath, just do what I said. Where's the heart?
Well, first off, I want to correct you. I'm not the vet. My wife's the vet. She's a colonel in the Army Reserve. So,
well, that's what I was meaning to say.
Oh, okay.
I may have fat fingered that, but it's cool.
No problem. I just want to clear that up. So, our armed services are the heart of America. That reminds me of a story about a third grade teacher beginning of the school year. All the kids came in the class and they went inside and all their desks were gone. And they were like that all the way to the end of the day. And at the end of the day, she talked to the kids and said, your freedom is here because of the people that have served in the military. And at that time, at the end of the day, fully dressed in full uniform, all the regalia, they came in, everybody carrying a desk and say, these are the men and women who are responsible for your freedom and for these desks. So you need to be responsible to them and learn and do your best job for them because you are the heart of America.
Brian, I'm gonna get mad at you, man. I'm not supposed to get emotional on the show. Catherine Bernard, 2 minutes. Your final words to our viewers.
Again, I just love the theme that you have for tonight, Danny, about the heart of America, because it does seem like gun rights is a theme coming up, and we have to claim it from the perspective of protecting life. So, those of us who are fans of the Second Amendment, find somebody who hasn't gone shooting before and offer to take them shooting. If you have a friend who's been really worried about violence, ask what you can do to help make them feel more secure. Recognize what we can do as part of the community to help protect and serve each other, rather than making people feel like relying on government is their only choice. So I think it's just important that even though these are critical rights and it is absolutely terrifying what the government is doing, most people don't see that. They aren't looking at the razor wire. They aren't seeing the fencing around the capitals. They're seeing what's in the headlines. And that's something that scares them. So let's not scare them even worse. Let's show them how we can protect and serve each other through the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, and protecting all of the ways that we can respect our fellow citizens.
Well done, Catherine. Well done. And thank you for being so dedicated to being a member of my show here at the Round Table. It means the world to me that you would take your time out of everything that you deal with in life to entertain me and my craziness here at this table. But I value you and I value your insight. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Danny, and good night, everyone.
Good night, darling. Alex Johnson, your last 2 minutes.
I don't have much else to say except just to encourage everyone to be involved. I mean, the overall theme that we need to look at is that the politicians and the political industry really just takes advantage of the death and destruction that their policies and laws create by the fact that they control the narrative. And the only way that we can counter that is by everyone being involved in activities, be that spreading the word in your community, spreading the word on social media to the extent that that is still effective with it being run by big tech companies, but just spreading the word, being involved locally. I mean, over the next month, there's going to be Republican leadership elections throughout the GOP in Georgia on April 17th. It's important to be involved there. I'd encourage people to be involved in the Georgia Republican Assembly with our hundreds of members to really just be tied in and trying to spread the word as part of a larger movement. And just be involved. I mean, that's georgiara.com, but just doing everything you can to make a difference. And I think that's the only way we're going to fix a lot of these problems and really bring back to the theme of this, which is the heart of America. I mean, the heart of America is it's in trouble, and I think that we need to be working together and bonded together to really fight back and get back to the basics of what our country was founded on.
Alex Johnson, as always, for your legal attendance, your dedication to those of us in the conservative base, along with your faithfulness out of everything you deal with to attend here at my table. I am forever grateful to you, and I look forward to our future meetings in person. So thank you for attending, and your words have not fallen on deaf ears. Brian Slawinski, 2 minutes.
It's hard to follow up with all these good points. All I would say is the heart of America is in every one of us. It's in our spirit. It's in our families. It's in our country. It's in your neighbors. And if we can work together to do what's right for this country, we can change America again back for the better and get it away from the path we're going down right now. We need to steer away from that path and steer toward each other and look towards each other and look towards each other's spirit. And I think if we do that, we'll be a better country because of it.
Ryan, I'm well, you found your way to steal thunder too, and that's cool because I love the way you did it. And I'll tell you this, man, I am so grateful for you. A lot of people don't know how much you deal with in your family and the amount of people that you have to govern and your education template and being the spouse of a veteran that is constantly moving. You sacrifice a lot. And in that process, you still found time for all of us. Residents here of the state of Georgia, a man that stepped forward and said, send me, I'll go. And for that, Brian, we owe you a great deal of gratitude. And I thank you for your heart and everything that you're doing behind the scenes that our viewers don't even realize is happening. Derrick Grayson, your closing remarks, sir.
I'd like to make a point going back to what Brian was talking about, the law here in Georgia. Two City of Atlanta police officers, when the mask mandate started, they arrested a brother for stepping up off into a show. I'm speaking in the, in that vernacular, for stepping up off into
I can dig it.
a convenience shop. They arrested him for having on a mask. And of course, hold up, Mayor, you can't do that. We trying to make people wear masks. You're going to make them not wear masks. So they were immediately released with apologies. Just an FYI point. When you want to stick it to us, you're going to do it. Hey, Danny, wonderful job. Everybody that's here, wonderful job. It's about to get real, brother. I said earlier, I'm wondering, are they going to murder me to take my weapons? I want to know, is a cop going to say, I got a warrant, I'm going to go into that man's home based off some BS and take his AR-15 because Marco Rubio said AR-15s need to be gone. Joe Biden, AR-15s need to be. Are they willing to kill him? It's about to get real. You're going to see what these politicians and police officers that are going to be asked to enforce these laws are made of. And it is always incremental. We got here. They started robbing us back in 1913. That's all I'll say. Thank you, Danny.
My man. My man. Folks, tonight you've probably been sitting back trying to say, okay, well, the heart of America, this, that, the other. But I want to take you through a recap for just a minute. I opened this show asking all of my panelists where they thought the heart of America was in certain topics, from the legal system to political structures, from the church to the home, our educational institutions to our local political bodies. And all of our panelists here on the show have just added their own passions. But I need all of you to understand one simple fact, that no matter what any of our answers are to where is the heart of America in said topic, the heart of America is in you. The heart of America was given to you, and it is your responsibility to ensure that future generations have it. See, I know this to be true because of the flag that is draped over my shoulder right now. The red standing for the blood that poured from those that defended everything that you enjoy, everything that you're upset about or concerned about in your politically correct culture, everything you bitch about on Twitter, everything you fight with people about because it's an R or a D. Let me tell you something. These are going to be my closing remarks tonight. I beg of you to get over yourself. Some of you may already be there, and a lot of you will agree with me, solely because you're fans of the round table and we're kindred hearts. But I'm speaking to those that are watching this for the first time, or those that are resistant, or those that are watching this to hate. Get over yourself. On this panel, the people that you have witnessed and seen talk tonight come from variable backgrounds, variable experiences, very different circumstances, career points that don't even cross sector, but we all wound up here at this table. The reason we wound up here is because we take responsibility for our actions and our obligations and the commitment to our Constitution and to this nation, and we take it seriously. So much so that behind the scenes, you don't even realize many of us are involved in dealings where we're discussing ways to help you even more. State, federal, and local. We're logistically trying to negotiate communications with other camps that understand our responsibility. So I posed the question tonight, where is the heart of America? My first answer is it's within all of you. My second response to that question, where is the heart of America? You ready? Hold on, because here it comes. The heart of America is in handcuffs. It has been arrested without representation, not read its Miranda rights, not provided access to adequate counsel, and it does not have its first appearance before a judge. Alex understands what I'm saying in legal terminology. So this is where I'm going to call my brothers that are currently on the show and my sisters that are not here on the panel, Brian, Derrick, and Alex. I ask all of you currently on the show to take a pledge with me that we, knowing that the heart of America has been placed under arrest unlawfully outside of the Constitution, without due process, without representation, and without appearance or an option to present before the judge and or a jury of our peers, I ask that all of you commit to me that we will dedicate this show to breaking into the jail, taking our people out, setting them free, no matter the cost, no matter the cost. We will defend our Constitution. Folks, every one of these gentlemen and everybody else affiliated with me. Brian, thank you for raising your hand. And for the show here, I'm raising mine. Alex, Derrick, will you raise yours? Will you commit to that? We're going to break you out. We're going to do everything in our power to break you out. But we have a commitment that you have to give us. We don't want your money. We don't want your endorsement. We don't want your access or your communications. We want to pledge that once you're out, that you will become so informed that they can never incarcerate you or anybody else around you, your children, your grandchildren, your neighbors. They can never do it again. That is our ask of you. And in that, if you're willing to accept that pledge, we will hold to ours and we will restore the heart of America. In the words of all of my brother and sister drill sergeants from the United States Army, this we'll defend. From all of my guests here tonight at the round table, thank you. I'm so glad you guys joined us. And from all of them to all of you, our viewers, thank you for watching. From me and my family here in the Low Country, we love you. We thank you. We'll defend you. We have raised our hand to our obligation. Will you raise your hand to yours and restore the heart of America? We bid you a good night.